test, which will be delivered shortly, is on sport. What makes a world champion? The speakers are Mr. Carl Lewis, Olympic gold medalist. Mr. Carl Lewis, Olympic gold medalist, track and field.
Lewis is unquestionably the king of track and field. In the last 2 decades of the 20th century, King Carl stunned the world with his extraordinary running and jumping abilities, and going where no man had gone before. He did not lose a single long jump event in over a decade, sped to a world record of 9.86 seconds in the 100 meters in 1991, and in his amazing career, he won 9 Olympic gold medals, 4 of them in the 1984 Games, also a world record. In his last hurrah at the world's biggest stage of sport, the 1996 Olympics, everyone felt it was time for King Carl to make way for younger athletes. But he surprised everyone. Carl Lewis won his 4th consecutive long jump gold, a fitting tribute to his all-time hero, Jesse Owens.
I didn't want to waste any energy or waste any focus, because when you think about it, every single race that I competed in, I had a final I had to start the next day. So the 100 meters ended at 7 o'clock one night. We did everything, and then the next morning I had to jump.
Carl Lewis grew up being taught to defy authority just because it was authority. And that remained with him forever, as he defied age, gravity, logic, history, and the world to enter the record books again and again. When he lost his father in 1987, Carl placed the 100-meter gold he won in 1984 in his coffin, a son's everlasting tribute to a father who was the biggest motivating factor in life. And he told his mother in good measure, "Don't worry, I will get another one." He went on to win not just 1, but 5 gold medals.
I didn't have time to really look at them because I had another event. Every day I finished the final, I had another race to go until the end. Then after that, we had to go home because I came to Europe to compete. So really, I didn't have time to celebrate.
Since bidding goodbye to the track in 1987, Carl Lewis has been involved in things as diverse as politics and charity. The Carl Lewis Foundation helps youngsters develop self-esteem, self-awareness, and self-expression through fitness and educational programs. Carl's motto has been simple: live life to the fullest, get the most out of it, reinvent yourself, and go for it again. And so it is no wonder that King Carl is chasing a new dream, acting, and perhaps hit a new high by winning an Oscar.
The second speaker is Sir Richard Hadlee, former New Zealand cricketer.
One of the greatest modern-day athletes, Carl Lewis is unquestionably the king. Sir Richard Hadlee was truly the Sultan of Swing.
Hold him! Magnificent delivery!
A ball in his hand was one of the deadliest weapons known to mankind, and batsmen the world over were made to hop, jump, duck, and weave before being sent back to the pavilion. Sir Richard may not have been equally at home with a bat in his hand, but Battles was good enough to star in one of cricket's greatest rivalries, and for the title of Best All-Rounder in the 70s and 80s. And like any great sportsperson, he reserved his best for the toughest challenge against Trans-Tasman rivals Australia. Nearly 1/3 of his 431 wickets came against the Wizards of Oz. His best ever match and innings performance also against them. And 15 wickets in the Brisbane Test in 1985, 9 of those in 1 innings.
That performance against Australia was certainly the highlight of my career. As a sports person, you strive for perfection and sometimes never get there. But for me, that was the closest I could get to it.
Battles was probably the greatest international captain the world did not see, but he never failed to set an example for others. His career averages are second to none, and his test match bowling average stands at a stunning 22.9. He was the first to cross the 400-wicket milestone, and his 431 test victims made him the highest wicket taker before it was eclipsed by Kapil Dev. Hadlee was a great player, not just because he had the skills, but also because he had an uncanny sense of occasion.
A wicket for Richard Hadlee with his last ball in Test cricket.
And that's probably why he bowed out with a 5-wicket haul that included a scalp with the last ball he bowled.
That was certainly a nice way to finish my career, a wicket with the last ball. But when I look back at my 19-year career, the things that really drove me was pride of performance, giving my best 100%. But at the back of my mind, there was always that little quote that a quitter never wins and a winner never quits.
Sir Richard hung up his boots in 1990, but his association with the game is ever enduring, and he has been the selection manager of Cricket New Zealand since 2000, and has been involved in many charities under the banner of the Sir Richard Hadlee Sports Trust. He is currently the national selector and is fervently hoping for India and New Zealand to reach the finals of the World Cup, with the Black Caps walking away with the cup.
Campbell is up.
I would now like to invite Mr. Carl Lewis, Sir Richard Hadlee, and the session chairperson, Mr. Vijay Amritraj, to kindly come to the dais and take their places. Mr. Vijay Amritraj is the chairperson of this session, former tennis champion and an actor. May we have the clip, please?
Almost single-handedly, Vijay Amritraj changed the way people perceived Indian tennis. He ruled the Asian ATP rankings for 14 straight years, gave James Bond a run for his money, and excelled as a tennis commentator. Amritraj made tennis such an exciting sport to watch. The world knew him as the nice guy of tennis, yet he was ferocious on the court. His chip and charge, serve and volley style of tennis captivated fans all over the world as he won 16 career titles. And along with Bjorn Borg and Jerry Connors, he was hallmarked as the ABC of tennis in the 70s.
Playing in the 70s and 80s was a very special time in tennis. Simply because, certainly Borg, Connors and McEnroe came a little bit later, were the best of my generation. But at the same time, tennis in our day was professional. We made a good living from it, but we also enjoyed it. I think I always say I was blessed to have played at the right time.
One lasting contribution Vijay made to tennis was the way he raised the profile of doubles along with brother Anand. The pair, gladiators in court, took India to the finals of the Davis Cup in 1974. Playing under the tricolour always saw Vijay at his best. He would dig deep to come up with performances that saw India in the Davis Cup finals again in 1987. He won the prestigious Baron Pierre de Coubertin Award, the only Indian to do so. In 2001, he was appointed the UN Messenger for Peace. Vijay has also been involved in charities working to prevent the spread of AIDS. A man of many parts, Amritraj has also dabbled in cinema.
I'm Vijay, Special Expediter, Universal Export. Welcome to India, Commander Bond.
The Bond movie Octopussy and Star Trek 4 being some of his well-known Hollywood appearances. Even after retiring from the sport, Amritraj continues to have a deep impact on the game. He is a regular in the senior pro circuit, giving tennis lovers glimpses of his trademark touch tennis. He is also a much sought-after tennis commentator for international sports networks.
I guess he's able to go wide with the spinning ball toss.
But above all, he is also a brand ambassador of an emerging India.
May I now invite you, sir, Mr. Vijay Amritraj, to chair the session and introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see the true sports fans here this evening. Just to quickly make a comment on the title of this conclave, Challenges of a Brave New World, and related to sport, which is why we're here. The late Martin Luther King rightly said way back when, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. And for us in sport, the hallmark of a champion, I've said this in the past many times, is the ability to win when he's not at his best, when things are going badly. The question in India we've always had is, why don't we have great athletes on a regular basis, like the two gentlemen sitting next to me? And I think it comes down to two wonderful adages, and one relates to us and one relates to the West, which is the old Olympic adage, it's not the winning that counts, but the taking part. And we take part in everything. It's a challenge for us, but we do it on a regular basis, time and again. And perhaps for about 2 to 3 weeks thereafter, after events are over, questions are asked, parliamentary questions are asked, and then it goes away very quietly, like most things do. But in the West, they follow that wonderful Vince Lombardi saying, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. That's why these two guys are here. Sport as we know it can be useful for many things. And I do believe that it really is the best form of communication in the world. Irrespective of where you are, who you're with, irrespective of religion, race, language, or color, it's only how good you are, how high you can jump, how fast you can run, and how well you can play that matters. And that's what brings people together on a regular basis. To this day, it has helped me to be able to communicate. It is great exercise. It is a must for everyone. It is something that we continue to sometimes avoid or don't find time to do. People in the corporate world, if you're playing for the weekend, if you're playing in the weekends, try to add one more day to it. I've always recommended it very strongly. The second reason, of course, is to be able to compete within your county, your districts, your state, and eventually within the country. But then there is the international competition. If we decide to go and compete internationally, then we need to know what it takes to become a world champion. And that is the reason we're here with these two great, great athletes. And I'm absolutely delighted and honored to be amongst you. Sport worldwide, as you know, really puts a country on the map. As we know, if it's Zidane from France, whether it's the Australian cricket team, whether it's Vijay Amritraj winning the World Championships in chess, or your All Blacks, the rugby team from New Zealand, then of course, nobody can forget Tiger Woods. So, what makes a world champion is a very important question for us to answer. We're able to do it in business on a regular basis, compete with the West and beat them at it, but we're not able to get to that point in sport. And hopefully, both these gentlemen will have the answers. So without anything else from me, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Sir Richard Hadlee of New Zealand is regarded as one of the country's greatest sportsmen, counted amongst cricket's greatest all-rounders. He was the first bowler in cricket history to take 400 test wickets, and a pivotal member of the New Zealand's most successful cricket team, which consistently punched above its weight in the mid-1980s. He finished his 17-year international career with 589 international wickets, 4,875 runs in tests and ODIs, and a central performer in New Zealand's 22 test victories during that period. Sir Richard belongs to an eminent family of New Zealand cricketers. His father, Walter, was a captain in New Zealand, and his two brothers also represented the country at cricket. Knighted for his services to cricket in 1990, before his playing career was over, Sir Richard is currently the chairman of the New Zealand Cricketers. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Sir Richard Hadlee.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for that very warm welcome, and thank you, Vijay, for the introduction. It is a wonderful pleasure to be with you this evening on this occasion. I hope you can understand my accent, being a New Zealander. We like to think, as New Zealanders, that we have a better accent than the Australians. Are there any Australians in the audience today? We think we speak better English than the Australians. I hope you don't mind if I use these particular things, because at the age of 55 the old eyesight does start to go a little bit, so maybe it's time for me to become a cricket umpire or something like that. But I was just watching that DVD clip of myself playing many years ago. It does bring back some wonderful memories, and it's fair to say that I stand here in front of you looking very different from that particular film clip. And I will assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that it is in fact me standing here. Just to clarify any situation, it is in fact me, although I was just a little bit confused before I came over here to India, in which I'm spending 50 wonderful days here in Delhi. But I was a little confused because back home in Christchurch, where I live, my next door neighbour has an 8-year-old son. And this 8-year-old and a couple of his mates came over to home on their bikes. The 8-year-old hid by the side of the garage, pushed his mates forward, and they knocked on the door, and I answered it. And one of his mates says, "Does Richard Hadlee live here?" And I says, "Yes, he does." And his other mate said, "Are you his father?" So I guess I've got to come to terms with the fact that the old ageing process has in fact caught up with me, as it does with us all. I suppose I am a bit of a has-been now. I had 19 years of playing first-class cricket, 18 years of international cricket, and clearly sport has been a wonderful part of my life. But when I retired in 1990, I went into the commentary box for a period of time, and at Lancaster Park in Christchurch, a friend of mine came up with his 6-year-old son, and he said to his 6-year-old son, "Get Sir Richard's signature." And the 6-year-old looked at me, looked at his father, and he said, "Oh, Dad, I don't want a commentator, I want a real cricketer." But the subject this evening, ladies and gentlemen, what makes a champion? And I've got to say it is a very interesting subject, one that will be debated, I guess, for a long time. But I would like to say that coming from New Zealand, we are a very small country of 4 million people. 80 million sheep, but 4 million people. And we have produced world champions, world record holders and gold medalists. And as Vijay said, we are known, of course, for our famous rugby team, the All Blacks. Traditionally, historically, the All Black rugby team is highly regarded and respected all around the world. Generally, when we play, we win. You know, and that is something quite tremendous. Sport has put New Zealand on the map. It has given us world recognition. And I tell you what, if we win the Cricket World Cup in a few weeks, it will give us even more recognition. So just watch this space over the next few weeks. But when I look back at my sporting career, there were, of course, some wonderful moments, some great highlights, but there were also times of disappointment. And these are the things that sports people have to get over very quickly. Sport, as I say, has been a wonderful part of my life. It's allowed me to represent New Zealand at a sport. That's something that I'm very proud of. To tour the world, to all the major playing cricketing countries, the memories, the friendships that one gets during that time. And to serve New Zealand cricket during the 1980s, which was regarded as the golden era in the history of New Zealand cricket, where we remained undefeated at home in Test series during that time, having beaten everyone as well. And it's still great to have an involvement in the game, to be able to put something back in the way of selection and launching the careers of young players today. But it all started from somewhere, and when you look at what makes a champion, I believe it goes back to when you're a youngster. And I was very fortunate, as Vijay mentioned in the introduction, to have been brought up in a family cricketing environment. Yes, my father played cricket for New Zealand, he captained New Zealand. I had brothers that also represented New Zealand. But as a youngster, we had the gear, the equipment, the encouragement to play the game. We had the environment to enjoy the game of cricket. And like many youngsters, I lived in a dream world, a land of make-believe. And I believe that is very important for youngsters, you know, to sort of visualize something happening in the future, or to be their heroes of the day. I remember as a youngster going into the garage at home, I put my father's cricket cap on, I put the pads on, the baggy gloves, and I put a cricket ball in a string, or in a sock, and I tied that sock to a piece of rope and attached it to the rafters. So I had a ball on a string. And I hit that ball again and again and again. Never got out, always scored 100. Wonderful moments of make-believe. And when I felt that I'd scored that imaginary Test 100 in the garage, I would lift my bat up and wave it to the imaginary crowd, because I'd seen that. And that's what I was trying to do. And on a fine day, I'd go out into the backyard at home, and we had a lawnmower, and I'd cut out a piece of grass. We had a roller, so I would roll that cut grass. So I was pretending to be the groundsman preparing a Test match pitch in the backyard. And because I was such a small fella and a skinny little fella in those days, and my hand was too small to bowl a cricket ball, I bowled a golf ball. And I tried to hit one wicket. And behind the wicket was the brick wall of the garage. And if the golf ball missed the wicket, which happened frequently, the golf ball would bounce back off the garage, and I would dive and take a one-handed catch, as though I was the wicket keeper, somebody at first slipper, caught and bowl. Always got 20 wickets, never lost a Test match against Australia. Wonderful moments of make-believe. But that was the starting point at round about 5, 6 years of age. At 12 years of age, I used to sell programs outside the main stadium in Christchurch to the incoming spectators. At 16 years of age, along with 7 or 8 other young people, helped operate the giant scoreboard that was on the embankment at Lancaster Park. And I often looked out from that scoreboard over the playing arena when a Test match was in progress, and I said to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful one day to be out there playing a real Test match for my country? 5 years later, at 21 years of age, that land of make-believe that I'd lived in for such a long period of time did in fact become a reality. And as my career evolved or developed, lessons were learned. I learned that talent gets you so far, that you cannot rely on talent alone. Talent needs to be converted into performance, and to do that, you need to have skills. We also learned that there is no room for complacency or comfort zones. That creates mediocrity. Mediocrity is second-rate, and quite frankly, second-rate is not good enough. And clearly, if a sports person relaxes or switches off, you are at your most vulnerable, because you are not expecting the unexpected. Mistakes are made. Opponents will seize the opportunity to gain that advantage. To get better and to become more competitive, skills need to be repeated again and again and again to be perfected. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can stand here and tell you that I bowled 110,000 cricket balls during my first-class international career. It's fair to say that there's a lot of repetition in that. But of course, what I was trying to do was to perfect that skill to become clinically efficient. And I think that is a wonderful saying, to become clinically efficient. Now, Carl is probably sitting here listening to me saying, what the hell is bowling a cricket ball? Think of baseball and chucking it, right? You know, the bloke that pitches, that was my job. I did that 110,000 times at the highest level. No wonder I'm tired. But I also tried to visualize things happening during my career. In other words, I tried to put myself in a position of it happening. And to give you a little example of that, in 1988, I was on 373 test wickets, along with England's Ian Botham. I was equal with him. And I wasn't going to play my next game for 6 months further down the track. And it was the Tour of India at that time. I needed one more wicket to become the world record holder. I had plenty of time to visualize and think about the next time, the next opportunity that I would get on the field of play to bowl my next ball to give myself that opportunity to become #1 in world cricket. It was at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore. I had never been there. And so I went into books and I researched and looked for a photograph of the ground to create a picture of that particular ground. I knew on past experience here in India that the pitch was going to be brown looking. It would have no grass on it. That invariably tourists, when they come here, they lose the toss and bowl first, as India bat into 2-3 days. I knew that a fellow called Chris Srikanth was the Indian opening batsman. I knew his technique, I knew how he played, I'd bowled to him before, I'd got him out before, and I knew that he batted in a blue helmet. On the 12th of November 1988, I came to Bangalore, and the things that I'd seen and visualised were on track, until my dream was totally shattered. Srikanth came out to bat in a white helmet. And next to him was the other opening batsman called Aaron Lowell. Never heard of him. But I've been working with him since, if you've been watching headlines today. But I was distracted. And I think the point that I'm trying to make here with visualization, I became too narrow-minded in what this picture was trying to create. I didn't take in all the other things. And when you visualize, you need to have a wider picture of everything so that when you're in that position, you're not going to be distracted. As it turned out, Aaron Lowell became that world record wicket, and a few balls later, Chris Srikanth did as well. There were many times that I kept questioning myself as to whether I could go beyond what I thought I was capable of achieving. Now, something that happened during my career, having spent 10 years in England playing English county cricket for Nottinghamshire, something hadn't been done for 17 years, and people said it could never, ever be done before. And that was the English cricket county double. And the double is capturing 100 first-class wickets during the season and scoring 1,000 runs in that same season. The double, the 100 and the 1,000. And I knew I had 24 matches to try and achieve this particular goal. But I also realised that I'm not going to play in 24 games. There are too many unknowns. So I worked out a budget or a calculation on playing 20 games in the season. Simply 5 wickets a game, 50 runs a game. Very easy mathematical equation. But of course, what happened if I didn't get 5 wickets in that game? Or I didn't get a bat? Or I got out for naught and didn't get those 50 runs? Every day, the budget, the goal changed. So I had to be flexible. Well, as it turned out, the wicket tally was okay. I was on target with the wicket tally, but I was always behind on the run tally. And Nottinghamshire took the trip down to Lord's, the home of cricket in London, to play Middlesex. And we bowled Middlesex out for 168. You following me with this, Cal? It's all very technical stuff. Anyway, we bowled them out for 168. Good performance. And when we batted, we had lost 4 wickets for 17 runs. And Clive Rice, my captain, a great friend of mine, he said to me, Paddles, my nickname because of my large feet, he said to me, Paddles, go out there and score a double 100. And I said, Ricey, what are you talking about? You know, we bowled them out for nothing, we're in all sorts of trouble, you're out for a naught, and you're telling me to go out there and score a double 100 against one of the best bowling attacks in county cricket. He says, go out there and do it. Well, I walked out to bat, and 6 hours later I came back with 210 not out. Ricey had put a thought in my mind that I had never, ever considered before. And that's what I mean. Can a person go beyond what they think they are capable of achieving? Perhaps just a few other thoughts. People talk about mental toughness, and clearly that is huge. And I stand here in front of you having a tremendous amount of admiration for Australian sports people, because quite frankly, they have it, and many people desperately want it, but sadly lack it. They have an uncanny way of winning games or pinching games in the last minute in so many different sports. And to me, mental toughness takes two forms, and that is, as Vijay mentioned in his introduction, when against the odds you can lift your performance to win. You find something special to be able to succeed. But it's also about handling the situation when it's all too easy, and having the ability to be able to be ruthless and efficient and to play your opposition out of the game. Because as I said, if you get in those comfort zones, you can be at your most vulnerable. My job as a bowler in the game of cricket was not only to get batsmen out, it was to destroy the opposition, to help win games, and sometimes end the playing career of some players. That was my job. But I also had a little mantra, a little card that was in my cricket coffin, my cricket bag, my gear bag. And key words were there to remind me of things to keep me focused. And I just want to share with you just 4 of those words, actually, not all of them, but just 4 of them. And they were, in simple terms, rhythm, off-stump, desire, and lily, which is not a flower. And just to tell you about that, rhythm, because bowling a cricket ball was about rhythm, timing, and coordination. It was about being relaxed. If I was stiff and tense, my body wasn't going to function for me. So with that rhythm word, I had to be relaxed. The off-stump was my target area, where I was trying to get that ball again and again and again, to give me my consistency factor. So here I was trying to be relaxed and trying to be consistent. Desire, my job was to get the batsman out. In other words, do my job. And Lily, Dennis Lillee, I'm sure you, as cricket follows, if you're out there, you will know the name of Dennis Lillee, arguably the greatest fast bowler in the history of the game. He was my role model, the bloke that I looked up to, admired, respected, because he had credibility. He had been there, he had done that. He was big, strong, aggressive, marvellous skills, great technique, intimidated the batsman with a little bit of chatter, called gamesmanship. But he got you out. He did his job. So what a wonderful role model for me. I was motivated for a number of different reasons. And what motivated me wouldn't necessarily motivate other people. But very quickly, I was motivated because of competition. I wanted to be the best. I was motivated by a determination to prove a point. If my professionalism was questioned or somebody had a go at me, I wanted to prove to them that I was right. And I've never forgotten what my father said to me, who sadly passed away only some months ago at the age of 90. But during my playing career, he said to me, as he did to my 4 brothers, he says, Richard, whatever you do, take pride in your performance. Do it to the best of your ability. Be happy with your performance, even if somebody does it better. You can only give 100%. I was also motivated because of statistics, and cricket is about statistics and records. And I was also motivated because of rewards, which is recognition of one's performance. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, a quote from an unknown source. We cannot choose to be born. We cannot choose our parents. We cannot choose our country. We cannot choose our history. But in a choiceless society, we can choose to live honourably or dishonourably. We can live courageously or in cowardice. We can live with purpose or with adrift. We can live with importance or with triviality. But in the end, forming our destiny is what ambition is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Richard. Extremely insightful to all of us. And I'm sure all of us have seen Richard play, perhaps except Carl Lewis.
I think I've seen it.
But
I'll send you the video.
watching Richard playing his sport is really watching a genius at work. Introduce our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, an athlete who won 10 gold Olympic medals. Ten World Championship medals in a career that spanned from 1979, when he first achieved the world ranking, to 1996, when he last won an Olympic title and subsequently retired. He currently lives in Los Angeles. He's pursuing an acting career, which we have a lot to talk about. His lifetime accomplishments have led to numerous accolades, including being voted Sportsman of the Century by the IOC, elected World Athlete of the Century by the International Association of Athletic Federations, and being named Olympian of the Century by the American sports magazine Sports Illustrated. He also helped transform track and field from its nominal amateur status to its current professional status, thus enabling athletes to have more lucrative and longer-lasting careers. It's that famous line in Chariots of Fire, as a man turned to Ian Charleston and said, "Just for the joy of seeing you run." And that's exactly the way we felt when we watched the legendary Carl Lewis run. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Lewis.
Well, good evening, and it's great to be a little ways from home. I'm not quite as far as you are, but you're here for a while. It's interesting you talk about, a little bit older in your eyes. Actually, it happens a lot earlier than your 50s, because I'm 45 and my glasses are not far away from me either, so I feel your pain. But fortunately, I can still see close. I just can't see anything else. So if it seems like I glance down and I know what I'm looking at, that's the truth. But if I look out there and it seems like I can't see you, that's the truth as well. I am very excited to be here to talk to you about a tremendous subject. And it was interesting listening to you, because some of the things I think I understood, and you say you don't think I've seen you before. I might have seen you before, but I didn't know what I was watching. Because I saw highlights of cricket before, and they said the greatest ones. You must have been one of them. And it just illustrates, and when you talk about a country like New Zealand that's taken pride in their sports, it's just something like I talk about with India. You have 4 million people, and I think that's what we have maybe in this hotel when you compare it to India, or at least the land space of this hotel. And I remember you talked about your father. I think back that my father used to always motivate us to be the best that we could be as kids, because my parents were both teachers. And, kids always, when I speak to kids all the time in schools, they say, "Well, gosh, did you ever get in trouble?" I said, "Well, no one really knew, because I had detention in between classes. So, because my parents always taught in the same schools I went to, so I got that straight early." And I tell you, being a champion is something that people come from so many different backgrounds. And that's what's so special. Because I came from a wonderful family. My parents were both coaches, and I went to school, and they coached us growing up, and they encouraged us. And growing up, I never thought that I would be a championship athlete, because I had two older brothers that were successful athletes. One brother was a professional football player, real football, not the one we claimed. And the other brother was a track athlete. And my younger sister was a track athlete as well, and then there was me. You know how, I always explain it this way, you know how when you have, a dog has a litter of dogs, or puppies, and then there's one like the rut, like the one little one that's kind of pushed out of the way, that's fighting to get that last little bit of milk. That would be me. So I learned at a very young age what it was like to not be successful in sports. And I tell you something, when you're 15 years old and the most important thing in your life is to be taller than your mother, then you have a long way to go. So but what I did, I found out, and what I learned, the most important things I learned about being a champion was during that period as a kid growing up, because my parents encouraged me to be the best that I could be. And that's something that we can all learn from no matter what we're involved in. I always kid my mother all the time. I tell her, I said, gosh, you know, I love you so much because you are the world's greatest liar. Because she told me as a kid growing up that I would be somebody and I'd be great in athletics. And I knew she always did it like this. And I used to wonder why as a kid, but I realized her fingers were crossed behind her back. So as I got older, though, I really learned that it wasn't about winning, because I was never going to win. Or I never won races as a kid. I was always set goals for myself to be successful. So, you know, I might be 7th place and I'm jumping up and down and everyone's saying, what's wrong with this kid? Is he crazy or something? But I might have had my best time. So I learned what it was like to focus on being the best you can be at a young age. Then all of a sudden, as I got older, I passed my mother. Then it was on to try to catch my younger sister, because she was still taller than I was when I was 16. And then I started to look beyond high school and look, hey, I'd like to try to go to college. And my parents said, you know, work hard and study hard. Being teachers, that was so important to us. I continued to study hard and work hard so I could get a scholarship to college. And then things started to happen. I started to grow and become a little bit better. And then I became a state champion. And next thing you know, in my senior year in high school, I became a national champion, a national record holder, and made my first national team. It all happened so fast. And so all of a sudden, I started to look at the world, and I said, hey, I could go to the Olympics one day. And so I went to the university. I went to the University of Houston, and I had these lofty goals, and I sat down. I said, I'm going to conquer the world now, and I know what my plan is, and I know what I'm supposed to be. I'm going to be this great athlete, and I'm going to revolutionize things. Of course, all this is at 18. So I go into a meeting. The first day, I meet with my coach. And I sit down and I look him dead smack in the eye and I said, gosh, I'm really happy to be here and I'm excited. Of course, I'm the big man on campus now. And I just know it. And I told him I want to run and be a great athlete, and I want to be a millionaire, and I never want to have a real job. This is going to be my job. And of course, I'm 18 years old, and we spent all of probably 15 minutes talking, and this is one of the first things I said. So he looked me dead in the eye, seriously, and I'm glad he paused for a few moments, and I learned later that's what he normally does. I'm glad he paused to think about that, because it was pretty presumptuous of a young kid to sit right there and say that. Well, he looked right at me, and he says, well, you know, if you really focus on making the money and the fame, then it's never going to happen. But if you focus on being the best you can, then I think it can happen. You can be an Olympic champion. So I learned, my first day I learned a tremendous lesson about being a champion. It's focusing on what is the most important aspect, and that is being the best you can be. So I trained that first couple of years. I just trained hard under the stadium when it rained or out. I was the last one to leave every day, barely made it to the training table to get dinner, because it took that hard work and discipline and focus. And that's what we had to do every day. So I go down in my second year in college. I'm 19 years old, and I go out to a meet, and I set a world record, my first world record, when I was just a kid. And he said, tremendous job, great job. And of course, I felt great about it, and everything was wonderful, and I'm doing well for my school. So I go to a meet a few weeks later, and I go into a competition where I'm running the 60 indoors and the long jump. Well, I win the 60, and I'm feeling great because I'm the youngest person in the final, and I win the race. So I go up to the long jump. I'm leading the long jump after 3 jumps. And I wasn't jumping that well, probably about 27, maybe 8 20-something. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And I was winning the competition. And it was obviously I wasn't totally focused because I was winning. Well, he called me over to the edge of the stadium, and we walked down to the edge. He walked all the way down the steps, all the way down, and he called me over. And I thought he was going to say, well, in your next jump, I want you to do this. Well, he looked at me in my eye, and you know what? I remembered it was that, later on, I remember it was that same look that he had when I said that I wanted to be a millionaire. And he said, you know, you're not really jumping that well, and obviously and apparently you've got all this figured out, so you really don't need me, so I'll let you take over. And he turned and walked up the stands and walked out of the stadium. And it hit me so strong because I realized that when you get to the top, it becomes even more difficult. You have to still keep your focus, and being a champion is always being your best. It's the same exact message. Well, of course, being 19 years old and a recent world record holder, it took me a while to figure that part out. That particular day, I said, how dare him run out of the stadium on me like this? And I went down on the next jump, and I had a tremendous jump and missed the world record by 1 centimeter. And out of nowhere, he came running back down the stadium again and said, okay, we have 2 more jumps. Now we can set this record. And it was just amazing how he was so excited. And that's when I got the message of what being a champion and being your best all the time, no matter what it takes, to continue to focus. So I went on, and I didn't set the world record that day, but I learned a tremendous lesson. And that was a lesson that I never forgot. And by the way, he never left the stadium again the rest of my career.